Okay, let's continue now with our discussion of the select command in SQL. The next aspect of the select statement that we will see is how to remove duplicates. So here's a query that's been posed to us. Show the departments our employees work in. So if you look at this table for employees, you can see that some of them work in administration, some of them work in human resources, some work in finance, some in sales and marketing, and so forth. And there's more than one employee in sales and marketing. Ken and Linda are both in sales and marketing. James and Rick are in information systems. But of course, in the result, I don't want to see the department administration 2 times. I don't want to see the department human resources 2 times. I don't want to see sales and marketing twice. I don't want to see accounting thrice, and so forth. So I just want a list of departments in which my employees work. So you would think that this would be the normal SQL select statement that you would use. You would simply say select department from employee, because you remember from the previous tutorial I told you that when you list the column after the word select, what Access does is it cuts that column vertically from the table that you specify. So you specified from employee and you said select department. So Access would just cut this column out vertically. Now let's actually run it and see what happens. So I copy this command over. Here we go. And if I run it, we can see it certainly slices out that column, but it lists all the rows for that particular column. Okay, so the duplicates are not removed. And you remember in our definition of relations, we said that every relation is a table, but every table is not a relation. And one of the requirements for a table to be a relation is that there must not be any duplicate rows. Now, Access by default and other relational databases, let's say Oracle or Microsoft SQL Server, they do not by default remove duplicates when you start doing the select operation. And there are reasons for doing that. Let's say when you're counting and so forth, where you might want to keep the duplicates, but by default they do not remove the duplicates. So all that implies is that if you want the duplicates removed, you have to do so explicitly. So let's go back to the command here. So you use the reserved word distinct to tell Microsoft Access that after you do your vertical slicing of department, remove all the duplicates. I just want the distinct departments. Okay, so let me go back to this Access command, SQL command, and I'll just type in the word distinct. By the way, this capitals doesn't, you're not required to type this in capital, but I'm typing the reserved word in capital just for my own convenience, just so that I can, when I visually see the SQL command, it reminds me which ones are reserved words and which ones are not. So I'm going to run this query again. And this time, do you notice all the duplicates have been removed? Okay. So let me get back to SQL view over here, and I'll delete this to prepare for the next query. So coming back to our SQL, our journey through the select statement. So the reserved word distinct is used to remove duplicates after a vertical cut. After you cut one column or more than one column, whatever columns you cut out using the select clause, when you put the word distinct in there, Access will remove duplicates. Okay. All right, so let's move on to the next sort of refinement of the select statement. So in some previous examples, I showed you the use of the where clause. So here is the okay. So let's look at the first few examples. The where clause, if you recall, is used to cut a table horizontally. So whenever you want to cut a table horizontally, you use the where clause. And what we are seeing here is the various refinements that you can have in the where clause. So the where clause can contain the equal sign, the not equal to sign, greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. So let's take the first example. here's the select statement. If you had to express this select statement as an English sentence, this would be equivalent to saying list the first and last names of all employees whose supervisor is employee number 4. So that's the English version of that select statement. So let's execute it. So I copy, go over to access, and we actually did an example like this. So here we are. So there's only one employee whose supervisor is employee number 4, and we can go back to SQL view and we can just check that for once. Here's the employee table, and if you look through this entire column of supervisors, you can see there is only one row which has supervisor number 4, and that row belongs to employee Alan Adams. So Alan Adams says his supervisor is employee number 4. Okay, so that's why there's only one employee in the output. Okay, so so this is the query that we had. So let me delete this. Okay. So I'm now set up for my next query. All right. So here's a slightly more complex where clause. So here's the where clause. So that those two angle brackets that you see, that's a shorthand for not equal to. So the English version of this query would be list the first and last names of all employees who are not in the administration department. Okay. So let me copy this over. Okay, and if I try to run this again, I'll probably get an error message. Yep, sure enough, and that's simply because the quotation marks in PowerPoint don't match the quotation marks in Access. So all I'm doing is I'm deleting those two quotation marks and retyping those. Okay, so let me run this. So here are all the employees who are not in the administration department. And how can I confirm that they're not in the administration department? Let me go back to the query and I will say list first name, last name, as well as the department. So I'm telling Access, cut 3 columns out from this table, cut the first name, last name, and the department. So when I get the answer to this query, I should not see any output where the department says administration. Okay, so let's run this. So you can see in the department column, there is not a single employee who is from the administration, and that's what the query was. Okay, and if you want to reverse it, where department equals administration, then I should get the name of all the employees who are in the administration department. It would just be the complement of what you just saw in the previous query. So if I run, so here you see these two, if you recall from the table, there were only 2 employees who were in the administration department, and that's what we are seeing here as the result of running the SQL query. Okay, all right, let's get back and delete this particular query again to prepare for our next one. Moving right along. Okay, now if we go back to the previous example, there's only one condition here, right? So in the first clause it says supervisor equals 4. In the second example, we only said department not equal to administration. So each of these where clauses, this one, this where clause, and this where clause, each of these where clauses represents only one condition. Okay, now you can combine conditions using ands and ors to get much more complicated conditions. So you can do your horizontal cutting based on much more complicated conditions, and all of these would show up in the where clause. So I want to show you some more complicated examples. So you can use the and or operators to combine conditions. Okay, so here is an example. So here's the table again, the employee table. So my first query is here. show the details of all employees whose first name are Ken or Mary. Okay, so I want to basically slice out all the rows where the first name is either Mary or Ken. Okay, now look at the grammar over here, the where clause. Okay, so if you dissect the where clause, you will see two conditions. Here's the first condition, first name equals Mary. Here's the second condition, first name equals Ken. So there are two conditions connected by or. All right, if either of those conditions is true, then Microsoft Access will slice that row out. Okay, so it goes down, first row, second row, third row, and every row it asks the question, is the first name Mary or is the first name Ken? Okay, if any one of them is true, then it pulls that row out. So let's run this query and see what we get. Control C, sorry. Okay, here's the copy, go back to Access, paste. Now I need to fix the quotes, you know that by now, that the PowerPoint quotations don't work properly. So I'm just retyping the quotes, that's all. Quotation marks, here's the quotation mark. So I run this, just put a space over there. So you can see over here, it picks out those employees for which the first name is Mary or Ken. So you can see when you go through this list, the first name is nothing other than Mary or Ken. They're always Mary or Ken. That's the result of using the OR operation. So let's go back to SQL view. I'm going to delete this query in preparation for the next one. And here we are showing you the AND. So show the details of all employees whose names are Alan Adams. Obviously, there could be more than one person with the same name. So we are saying show the details of all employees whose names are Alan Adams. Again, once again, look at the where clause. This is the where clause. And again, you can see two conditions. The first condition says first name equals Alan. The second condition says last name equals Adams. Okay, so there are two conditions and we have combined them using AND. AND means both those conditions have to be true in order for you to pull out the row. So Access will go through the table row by row, and at every row it will ask, is the first name equal to Alan and the last name equals Adam? If either one of those is not true, then it skips down to the next row. Okay, so let's run this thing and see what we get. Copy and let's see, here we go. Again, I need to fix these quotes. Type the quotes again. And now I will run this query. So do you see it's produced in this case, it so happens that there's only one employee called Alan Adams. But if you're thinking of, let's say, a student database, there could very well be two students whose name is Alan Adams. So you could have gotten more than one row. It just so happens that in this case, you got only one employee as the output. Okay. All right. So getting back to our SQL view, let me delete this query again in preparation for our next one. Let's see what we have next. Okay, so if you have a lot of these conditions or conditions, then it sometimes gets tedious to list them all. Okay, so as a shorthand, there is a reserve word that you can use called in that just reduces your typing. Okay, so let me just show you this example. So it says, the question says, show the details of all employees whose first names are either Mary, Alan, or Ken. If we follow the example of the previous slide, the one here, where we said the first name is Mary or first name is Ken, we'll follow that same logic. And here is the where clause. If you follow that same logic, it says first name is equal to Mary, or first name is equal to Alan, or first name is equal to Ken. So let me first run this and show you. This is the same pretty much as the previous query, just that there are 3 names that you're picking out now. So I paste it over here. So it's let's see, again I have to fix the quotation marks. Okay, so this will pick out all the employees, all the rows where the first name, let me put a space here, where first name is equal to Mary, or first name is equal to Alan, or first name is equal to Ken. So let me run this, and that's exactly what you get over here. You can see Mary, Alan, or Ken. Now let's get back to the SQL view. You can easily imagine if I start having 5, 6 of these conditions. Here we have only 3 conditions. If I start getting 5 or 6 of these conditions, of these names, so first name could be Mary, or first name could be Alan, or first name could be Ken, or first name could be Alex. It just gets very tedious typing all this up. Okay, so instead of stringing this out, there is an alternate syntax that one can use, and that's the in clause. Okay, so just look at the grammar over here. Look at the where clause. It says where first name in, and then you have a list. So I think the meaning is pretty straightforward. You go down every row and you pick out that row as long as the first name is in that list. So if you're trying to search through a list, using a list, then the in reserved word is very useful. So let me copy this command over. And you have to bear with me. I have to fix the quotes once again. So 1 quote here, 1 quote here. Okay, here we are. We're all set. And let me run this. And you can see got exactly the same output as before. Okay, so the in clause that I just demonstrated for you is helpful when you're trying to search, or rather cut a table horizontally based on a list. So you're searching based on a list. Okay, so you're filtering out rows based on a list. Then the in clause is very helpful. Okay, again, to keep the length of the tutorial manageable, let's stop this particular tutorial at this point, and then we'll continue in the next one.